Imagine a country where more than 800 languages are spoken, where ancient tribes have lived in isolation for thousands of years, where dense rainforests cover mountains so remote that entire communities remained completely unknown to the outside world well into the 20th century, where volcanoes rumble and earthquakes shake the earth on a regular basis, and where some of the most extraordinary biodiversity on the entire planet is packed into a landscape of breathtaking variety and scale. Imagine a nation that is simultaneously one of the oldest, continuously inhabited places on Earth and one of the newest independent countries in the world. A land where Stone Age traditions and modern government offices exist side by side, where a man might wear traditional body paint and ceremonial feathers to a festival on the weekend and conduct business in English on Monday morning, where the ocean surrounding the islands is so clear and so rich with marine life that divers come from every corner of the world just to sink beneath its surface and experience what feels like another world entirely. Welcome to Papua New Guinea, a country that defies easy description, that refuses to fit neatly into any category, and that rewards anyone who takes the time to truly learn about it with a sense of wonder and fascination that few other places on Earth can match. This is a nation of extremes in every sense of the word. Extreme linguistic diversity, extreme geographic variety, extreme cultural richness, extreme natural beauty, and extreme challenges. And today, we're going to explore all of it, from the ancient history of its first inhabitants to the complex geopolitical pressures it faces in the modern world, from the mysteries of its remote highland tribes to the strategic importance of its location in the Pacific, from the extraordinary biodiversity of its rainforests to the very real threats that development and climate change pose to that biodiversity. So let us begin this journey into one of the most fascinating and least understood countries in the world. To understand Papua New Guinea, you must first understand its geography, because the physical landscape of this country has shaped everything about it: its history, its culture, its economy, its politics, and the extraordinary diversity that makes it unlike any other nation on Earth. Papua New Guinea is located in Oceania, sitting north of Australia and east of Indonesia, and it occupies the eastern half of the island of New Guinea, which is the second largest island in the entire world, surpassed in size only by Greenland. The western half of New Guinea, known as West Papua, is part of Indonesia, making New Guinea an island divided between two entirely different nations with very different histories and political systems. But Papua New Guinea is not just the eastern half of New Guinea. It also includes more than 600 additional islands scattered across the surrounding waters, including major island groups like New Britain, New Ireland, Manus, and the autonomous region of Bougainville, as well as hundreds of smaller islands, atolls, and coral cays. The total land area of the country is approximately 462,000 square kilometers, making it a substantial nation by any measure. But what is truly remarkable is the variety of terrain packed into that area. The interior of the main island is dominated by the Owen Stanley Range and the Central Range, a spine of rugged mountains that runs the length of the island and includes peaks that rise above 4,000 meters, some of which are high enough to receive snowfall, despite being located in the tropics just a few degrees south of the equator. These highland mountains are deeply dissected by river valleys and gorges, creating a landscape so rugged and so difficult to traverse that communities living on opposite sides of the same mountain range could develop entirely separate languages and cultures over thousands of years without any meaningful contact with each other. This is, as we will see, one of the key explanations for the extraordinary linguistic and cultural diversity that is Papua New Guinea's most famous characteristic. Below the mountains, vast lowland plains are covered by some of the largest and most intact tropical rainforests remaining anywhere on the planet, threaded by great rivers like the Fly, the Sepik, and the Ramu that drain the interior highlands and flow to the sea through wide delta systems rich with wildlife and human settlement. The coastlines range from white sand beaches fringed with coconut palms to mangrove swamps to dramatic sea cliffs, and the surrounding waters contain coral reef systems of extraordinary richness and biological diversity. Papua New Guinea also sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, that great arc of tectonic activity that circles the Pacific Ocean and is responsible for the majority of the world's earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. As a result, the country experiences frequent seismic activity, with earthquakes ranging from minor tremors to devastating major events, and it has numerous active volcanoes, some of which have caused significant destruction and loss of life in recorded history. The combination of tectonic activity, tropical climate, and extraordinary topographic variety has created a landscape that is as dramatic and geologically active as any on Earth, and it has also created the conditions for the extraordinary biodiversity that makes Papua New Guinea one of the most important countries in the world from a conservation perspective. The country is organized into 22 provinces, which are grouped into 4 main administrative regions. The Highlands region covers the mountainous interior and is home to some of the largest population centers outside the capital, including the cities of Mount Hagen and Goroka, which serve as commercial and administrative hubs for the densely populated highland valleys. The Mamazi region covers the northern coastal areas in the Sepik River Basin, a vast lowland area of great cultural and artistic significance that has produced some of the most renowned traditional art in the Pacific. The southern region covers the southern coastal areas, including the capital Port Moresby and the Papuan Peninsula, a dramatic finger of land that extends southeastward toward Australia, and that was the site of some of the most important military action of World War II in the Pacific. And the islands region covers the archipelagos lying off the northeastern coast of the main island, including New Britain, New Ireland, Manus, and Bougainville, each of which has its own distinct history, culture, and character. The capital city, Port Moresby, is located on the southern coast of the main island and is the political, administrative, and commercial center of the country, though it is not connected to most of the rest of the country by road, a remarkable fact that speaks to the geographic challenges of building infrastructure in such a rugged and remote landscape. The population of Papua New Guinea is approximately 10 million people, and this population is one of the most extraordinarily diverse in the world by virtually every measure you might choose to apply. The country is home to hundreds of distinct tribal and ethnic groups, each with their own history, territory, customs, and social structures, and these groups speak more than 800 distinct languages, making Papua New Guinea the most linguistically diverse country in the entire world by a very significant margin. To put this in perspective, consider that the entire continent of Europe, with a population of roughly 750 million people spread across dozens of countries, has approximately 300 indigenous languages, while Papua New Guinea, with a population of 10 million people in a single country, has more than 800. This astonishing linguistic diversity is a direct result of the geographic isolation that the rugged mountain terrain created for highland communities over thousands of years, allowing populations that were separated by mountains and valleys to develop entirely independently of each other. And it means that Papua New Guinea contains within its borders a larger proportion of the world's total linguistic diversity than any other nation. The official languages of the country are English, which is used in government, education, and formal settings. Tok Pisin, which is a Creole language based on English with influences from German and various Melanesian languages, and serves as the most widely spoken common language across the country, and Hiri Motu, which is a simplified form of the Motu language spoken in the Port Moresby area. Tok Pisin in particular plays an enormously important practical role in daily life, serving as a lingua franca that allows people from completely different linguistic backgrounds to communicate with each other, and it has evolved into a rich and expressive language with its own literature and cultural significance. Strong tribal identity remains absolutely central to the social world of most Papua New Guineans, and community-based village life is the norm for the large majority of the population, with kinship networks, clan obligations, and traditional governance structures playing a crucial role in how people organize their lives, resolve disputes, allocate resources, and understand their place in the world. Traditional culture in Papua New Guinea is not a historical artifact preserved in museums, but a living, breathing reality that shapes daily life for millions of people across the country. Tribal ceremonies, dances, and festivals remain absolutely central to social and cultural life, serving important functions in maintaining community cohesion, marking important life events, negotiating relationships between different groups, and honoring ancestors and spiritual forces. Well, one of the most famous expressions of this living cultural tradition is the Goroka Show, an annual cultural festival held in the highland city of Goroka that brings together dozens of tribes from across Papua New Guinea to showcase their traditional dances, costumes, body paint, and music. The Goroka Show, along with similar events like the Mount Hagen Cultural Show, is one of the most visually spectacular cultural events anywhere in the world, featuring hundreds of dancers in elaborate traditional dress, with faces and bodies painted in intricate patterns, wearing headdresses made from the feathers of birds of paradise and cassowaries, and performing dances that have been handed down through generations. These festivals are not merely performances for tourists, though they do attract significant visitor interest, but are genuine cultural celebrations in which participation carries deep social and spiritual meaning for the participants. Traditional body paint, the application of elaborate patterns and designs to the face and body using natural pigments, is one of the most distinctive and recognizable aspects of Melanesian cultural expression, and the specific patterns and colors used by different groups carry complex meanings related to clan identity, spiritual status, and the specific occasion being celebrated. Ceremonial masks, carved from wood and decorated with paint, feathers, shells, and other materials, are another important form of cultural expression, used in ceremonies connected to ancestor veneration, initiation rituals, and other spiritually significant events. Storytelling and oral history remain critically important in a society where the majority of cultural knowledge has traditionally been transmitted through spoken word rather than written text, and skilled storytellers occupy positions of considerable respect and authority within their communities. The human history of Papua New Guinea is extraordinarily ancient, stretching back further than that of virtually any other country outside of Africa and the Middle East. Archaeological evidence indicates that humans have been living on the island of New Guinea for at least 40,000 years, which means that the ancestors of today's Papua New Guineans were living on this island during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower than today, when New Guinea was connected to Australia as part of a larger landmass known as Sahel, and when the human species was still in the relatively early stages of its spread across the globe. These early inhabitants were hunter-gatherers who lived by hunting the rich wildlife of the island's forests and rivers and gathering the abundant plant foods available in the tropical environment. But Papua New Guinea is also, remarkably, one of the sites of one of the world's oldest and most independent agricultural revolutions. Evidence from the Cook Swamp archaeological site in the Highlands, which has been recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, shows that people in the New Guinea Highlands were practicing early forms of agriculture, including the cultivation of taro and other crops, and the management of wetland environments for food production, as far back as 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. This makes the New Guinea Highlands one of only a handful of places in the world where agriculture developed completely independently, without influence from other agricultural civilizations, and it places Papua New Guinea alongside ancient Mesopotamia, China, and Mesoamerica as a cradle of the agricultural revolution that transformed human civilization. The development of agriculture in the highlands allowed population densities to grow far beyond what was possible with hunting and gathering alone. In the dense populations of the highland, valleys became the foundation for the complex tribal societies that still characterize the region today. Many communities in the more remote areas of Papua New Guinea remained largely isolated from the outside world until the 20th century, and there are documented cases of first contact between highland communities and the outside world occurring as recently as the 1930s and beyond, meaning that within living memory there were people in Papua New Guinea who had never seen a person of European descent, never encountered steel tools or manufactured goods, and had no knowledge of the existence of the wider world beyond their own valleys and mountains. These extraordinary stories of first contact, some of which are documented in photographs and film footage, offer a uniquely vivid window into the experience of encountering radical cultural difference and have become an important part of both Papua New Guinean history and the broader history of human exploration and contact. The arrival of Europeans and the colonial period that followed brought enormous and often violent disruption to the lives of Papua New Guinean communities. Europeans first made contact with the island of New Guinea in the 16th century, when Portuguese and Spanish explorers sailing through the Pacific sighted its coast, and the island received its name from the Spanish explorer Inigo Ortiz de Retes, who named it Nueva Guinea in 1545, because the appearance of the coastline and its inhabitants reminded him of the Guinea coast of West Africa. But serious European interest in colonizing New Guinea did not develop until the 19th century, when the great European powers were engaged in the competitive scramble for colonial territories around the world. The island was eventually divided between three colonial powers, with the Netherlands claiming the western half, Germany claiming the northeastern quarter and the islands of the Bismarck Archipelago, and Britain claiming the southeastern quarter. British New Guinea was later transferred to Australian administration in 1906 and became known as the Territory of Papua, while German New Guinea was seized by Australia at the outbreak of World War I in 1914 and subsequently administered by Australia under a League of Nations mandate as the Territory of New Guinea. The colonial period was marked by the imposition of foreign administration, the suppression of traditional practices, including tribal warfare and certain cultural ceremonies, the introduction of Christianity through intense missionary activity, the development of plantation agriculture using indigenous labor under conditions that were often coercive and exploitative, and the gradual but profound transformation of traditional social structures through contact with the global economy and Western cultural values. The impact of Christian missionary activity was particularly profound and lasting, and today Papua New Guinea is a predominantly Christian country, with the Constitution declaring it to be a Christian nation, though traditional spiritual beliefs and practices continue to coexist with Christianity in complex and varied ways across different communities. World War II brought the conflict of the wider world to Papua New Guinea in a devastating and transformative way. Following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 and its rapid expansion across Southeast Asia and the Pacific in early 1942, Japanese forces invaded New Guinea and came perilously close to capturing Port Moresby, which would have given them a base from which to threaten Australia directly. The campaign to halt and then reverse the Japanese advance across New Guinea became one of the most grueling and hard-fought of the entire Pacific War, fought across some of the most difficult terrain imaginable, through dense jungle, over high mountain passes, and conditions of extreme heat, humidity, and rain, against a determined and skilled enemy. The most famous episode of this campaign is the Kokoda Track Campaign, in which Australian and some Papua New Guinean forces fought a desperate fighting retreat along the Kokoda Track, a narrow mountain trail crossing the Owen Stanley Range, before eventually halting the Japanese advance and then pushing them back in a series of bloody engagements that lasted through late 1942. The Kokoda Track campaign has become one of the most revered episodes in Australian military history, commemorated every year by thousands of Australians who walk the track as a form of tribute to those who fought and died there. And it forged a special bond between Australia and Papua New Guinea that continues to influence their relationship today. Papua New Guinean carriers, known as the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, played an indispensable role in the campaign, carrying supplies and evacuating wounded soldiers along the track under extremely difficult conditions, and their contribution is remembered and honored alongside that of the Australian soldiers they supported. The broader New Guinea campaign continued until the end of the war and involved American, Australian, and Papua New Guinean forces fighting Japanese positions across the length and breadth of the country, leaving behind a landscape scattered with the physical remnants of war that are still being discovered today. After World War II, Australia continued to administer both the territory of Papua and the territory of New Guinea, and under pressure from the United Nations and the changing political climate of the post-war world, it began to prepare the territory for eventual self-governance and independence. This process accelerated through the 1960s and early 1970s with the establishment of a House of Assembly, the development of political parties, and the gradual transfer of administrative responsibilities to local political leaders. Papua New Guinea gained full independence on September 16, 1975, becoming a sovereign nation after a history of foreign administration stretching back centuries. The country chose to remain within the Commonwealth of Nations and established a constitutional monarchy with the British monarch as the symbolic head of state, represented in Papua New Guinea by a governor-general. The government is a parliamentary democracy with a unicameral national parliament. A prime minister is the head of government, and a complex electoral system that has produced a notably volatile political environment, with frequent votes of no confidence, shifting political alliances, and a large number of political parties competing for power. This political instability has been one of the significant challenges facing Papua New Guinea since independence, making it difficult to implement long-term development strategies and contributing to issues of corruption and governance that continue to hamper the country's development. The economy of Papua New Guinea is dominated by its extraordinary endowment of natural resources, which represent both the country's greatest economic asset and the source of some of its most significant development challenges. The country has substantial deposits of gold, copper, nickel, and other minerals, and mining has been a major sector of the economy since the colonial period. The Porgera gold mine in the Enga province and the OK Teddy mine in the western province are among the largest mining operations in the Pacific region, and together with other mining projects, they generate significant export revenues and government royalties. The country also has significant reserves of oil and natural gas, and the development of liquefied natural gas projects. Most notably, the PNG LNG project led by ExxonMobil has added a major new dimension to the energy export sector and brought substantial foreign investment into the country. Agricultural exports, particularly coffee, cocoa, palm oil, and copra, have been important since the colonial period and continue to provide livelihoods for many smallholder farmers across the country. Timber exports from the country's vast rainforests have also been a significant source of revenue, though, as we will discuss, this comes at a serious environmental cost. Despite this impressive array of natural resources, the benefits of resource extraction have not translated into broad-based prosperity for the majority of Papua New Guineans, and the country continues to struggle with high levels of poverty, inadequate public services including healthcare and education, poor infrastructure, and significant inequality between those connected to the resource economy and the majority of the population who depend primarily on subsistence farming. This paradox of resource wealth coexisting with widespread poverty is one of the central challenges and most debated issues in Papua New Guinean development policy, and it reflects broader patterns seen in many resource-rich developing countries around the world. Tourism is a growing sector with enormous potential given the country's extraordinary natural and cultural assets, including world-class diving and snorkeling in the Bismarck Sea and around the islands of Milne Bay, highland trekking, and cultural experiences, birdwatching in some of the world's premier birding destinations, and historical tourism connected to World War II sites, but developing tourism infrastructure in such a geographically challenging country, with relatively limited transport connections, remains a significant obstacle. Papua New Guinea is one of the most important countries in the world from a biodiversity and conservation perspective, and this is an aspect of the country that deserves much more attention than it typically receives in international discussions. The island of New Guinea evolved in relative isolation from other major landmasses for millions of years, and this evolutionary isolation produced a fauna and flora of extraordinary distinctiveness and richness. Papua New Guinea is home to more than 700 species of birds, including the birds of paradise, a family of birds found almost exclusively in New Guinea that are among the most extravagantly beautiful and behaviorally complex birds on Earth, with males displaying spectacular plumage and elaborate courtship dances that have captivated naturalists and wildlife filmmakers for generations. The country is also home to tree kangaroos, which are macropods that have evolved to live in forest trees, rather than on the ground, and are found only in New Guinea and northeastern Australia, as well as long-beaked echidnas, which are egg-laying mammals related to the platypus and are among the most ancient and evolutionarily distinctive mammals alive today. The marine environment is equally extraordinary, with the waters around Papua New Guinea forming part of the Coral Triangle, the global center of marine biodiversity, and containing coral reef ecosystems of incomparable richness that support thousands of species of fish, invertebrates, and other marine organisms. The rainforests of Papua New Guinea are among the largest and most intact remaining in the world, covering a substantial portion of the main island and the larger offshore islands, and containing plant and animal species that have not yet even been scientifically described. This extraordinary natural heritage makes Papua New Guinea one of the most important priorities for global conservation efforts, but it also makes the environmental challenges facing the country all the more alarming. Deforestation, driven by logging, agricultural expansion, and palm oil development is proceeding at a significant rate in some parts of the country, threatening forest habitats that took millions of years to develop. Illegal logging, in which timber is extracted without proper permits or environmental safeguards, and often in violation of the rights of local communities, has been a persistent problem that has proved difficult to control. Mining operations, while economically important, have caused significant environmental damage in some areas, most notoriously the OK Teddy mine, which for decades discharged mine waste directly into the OK Teddy and Fly rivers, causing extensive damage to river ecosystems and the communities that depended on them. Climate change is adding additional pressure on ecosystems already stressed by development, with rising sea temperatures causing coral bleaching on reef systems, changing rainfall patterns affecting forest ecosystems, and sea level rise threatening coastal and island communities. The strategic and geopolitical importance of Papua New Guinea has grown significantly in recent years, as competition between the United States and China for influence in the Pacific has intensified. Papua New Guinea's location is strategically significant, lying close to major shipping routes connecting East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and the wider Pacific, and its position north of Australia makes it particularly important from an Australian security perspective. The country has historically been within the Australian sphere of influence, and Australia remains by far the largest provider of development aid and has deep political, economic, and security ties with Port Moresby. But in recent years, China has significantly increased its engagement with Papua New Guinea, offering infrastructure investment, trade deals, and diplomatic attention as part of its broader Belt and Road Initiative and its effort to build influence across the Pacific and developing world. The United States has also increased its engagement, recognizing that its relative neglect of the Pacific in the decades after the Cold War had allowed China to gain influence in a region of significant strategic importance, and both the United States and Australia have been working to deepen security and economic ties with Papua New Guinea and other Pacific nations. In 2018, Papua New Guinea hosted the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, a major international gathering that brought leaders from across the Pacific Rim to Port Moresby and gave the country an unusual degree of international visibility and diplomatic attention. The country has also been engaged in discussions about security cooperation with both Australia and the United States, including agreements on maritime surveillance and defense cooperation that reflect the growing strategic importance of the Pacific in great power competition. Papua New Guinea thus finds itself in a position somewhat analogous to that of other small and medium-sized nations in strategically important locations, being courted by competing great powers, and having to navigate carefully between them while trying to secure the resources and partnerships needed for its own development. The natural hazards that Papua New Guinea faces are among the most severe and varied of any country in the world, a direct consequence of its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire and its tropical climate. Earthquakes are a regular occurrence, with the country experiencing thousands of seismic events each year, ranging from barely perceptible tremors to major earthquakes capable of causing widespread destruction. In 2018, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck the highlands region, killing more than 100 people, displacing tens of thousands, and causing enormous damage to infrastructure and agricultural land in an already remote and underserved area. Volcanic eruptions are another constant threat, with numerous active volcanoes across the country and the islands. One of the most notorious is Tavervur, a volcano on the island of New Britain near the town of Rabaul, which erupted catastrophically in 1994, burying much of Rabaul under volcanic ash and forcing the relocation of the town, and which has continued to show volcanic activity in the years since. Tsunamis, triggered by both local earthquakes and distant seismic events, have struck the Papua New Guinean coast on multiple occasions, causing significant loss of life and destruction of coastal communities. Landslides, triggered by the combination of steep mountain terrain and heavy rainfall, are another frequent and deadly hazard. And the tropical climate, with its intense seasonal rainfall, produces regular flooding in lowland areas that can devastate communities and destroy crops. These natural hazards are not merely inconveniences, but represent a fundamental constraint on development, regularly destroying infrastructure that has been built at great cost, disrupting agricultural production, and requiring emergency response resources that could otherwise be invested in development. Among the many fascinating and remarkable aspects of Papua New Guinea, a few deserve special mention as particularly striking illustrations of what makes this country so unique. The fact that more than 800 distinct languages are spoken within its borders is truly extraordinary and has no parallel anywhere else on Earth. And it means that Papua New Guinea contains within itself a larger share of the world's total linguistic heritage than any other single nation. The existence of tribes that were making first contact with the outside world within living memory, with documented cases of highland communities encountering Europeans for the first time in the 1930s and later, places Papua New Guinea in a unique position in modern history, a place where the encounter between the Stone Age and the modern world happened not in the distant past, but within the lifetimes of people who are still alive today. The country contains within its borders one of the 3 largest remaining areas of tropical rainforest in the world, alongside the Amazon and the Congo Basin, making it a global priority for biodiversity conservation. Its active and important role in the Pacific theater of World War II, particularly through the Kokoda Track campaign, has given it a place in the military history of the conflict that is disproportionate to its size and population, and its stunning landscapes, from the snow-capped peaks of the Central Range to the crystal-clear waters of Milne Bay, from the vast papyrus swamps of the Fly River Delta to the active volcanic landscapes of Rabaul, give it a geographic drama that few countries anywhere in the world can match. Looking toward the future, Papua New Guinea faces a set of challenges that are complex, interconnected, and in some respects unique, but that also reflect broader questions that many developing nations with rich natural resources and diverse populations are grappling with. The central challenge is how to translate the country's extraordinary endowment of natural resources into broad-based prosperity for all its citizens, rather than having the benefits of resource extraction concentrated among a small elite, while the majority of the population continues to depend on subsistence farming with inadequate access to healthcare, education, clean water, and other basic services. Achieving this will require improvements in governance and reduction of corruption, better management of resource revenues, greater investment in rural infrastructure and services, and policies that give local communities a meaningful share of the benefits from resource development on their traditional lands. Climate change and environmental sustainability present another set of urgent challenges, requiring both adaptation to the climate impacts that are already occurring and protection of the extraordinary natural heritage that is one of Papua New Guinea's most important assets. Political stability and the strengthening of democratic institutions are needed to create the environment in which long-term development can occur, and maintaining and celebrating the extraordinary cultural diversity that is Papua New Guinea's most distinctive characteristic, while also building the national unity and shared identity needed for effective governance, is a delicate but essential balancing act that the country must continue to navigate. Papua New Guinea is a land of extremes, linguistically, geographically, culturally, and in terms of the challenges and opportunities it faces, and it is a country that the world would do well to pay more attention to. From the ancient hunter-gatherers who first arrived on the island 40,000 years ago, to the highland farmers who independently invented agriculture thousands of years before Europeans arrived, from the colonial period that imposed foreign rule and transformed traditional societies, to the independence that restored sovereignty in 1975. From the extraordinary tribal cultures that continue to thrive in highland valleys and coastal villages, to the geopolitical competition that is playing out across the Pacific today, the story of Papua New Guinea is one of the great untold stories of our world. Its dense rainforests are among the lungs of the planet and among the most important repositories of biological diversity remaining on Earth. Its people, with their 800 languages and hundreds of distinct cultural traditions, represent an irreplaceable portion of the total human cultural heritage that our species has accumulated over tens of thousands of years. Its location, its resources, and its growing engagement with the wider world make it an increasingly important player in Pacific and global affairs. And its landscapes, from volcanic islands to coral reefs to mist-covered mountain forests, are among the most beautiful and dramatic on the face of the earth. From the Goroka show, where hundreds of warriors in full ceremonial dress dance to the beat of traditional drums, to the ghost ships and aircraft lying on the floor of the sea. From the ancient agricultural terraces of the highlands to the mangrove forests of the Sepik Delta, Papua New Guinea is a place that deserves to be known, understood, celebrated, and protected, and we hope that after watching this video, you feel that you have taken your first real steps toward understanding one of the most remarkable nations on our extraordinary planet.